All right, Valiant Warriors, your boy Nick and Ken B, we're back with a special clangtastic episode of Valiant Watch. Specifically, we're talking about Quantum and Woody. New number one just dropped. If you haven't picked it up yet, you need to. And let's get into it. First, we're going to get in some news, and then we're just going to tell these folks what they don't know, and some of them what they might know, but they need to know more of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot, but we had talked a little bit about a couple of new announcements because Valiant 2020 is happening. So there's going to be a lot of stuff rolling pretty quickly. We're going to kick things off with Dr. Tomorrow. I know that's something that we've kind of talked about a little bit, but it's coming in February, and February 19th to be specific. And it's something that I think it's interesting to start out with because they're really bringing in a classic superhero vibe with this one. And, you know, you can kind of tell that immediately from just the visuals that they've given us so far. But he said, Jim, one of the artists, one of the creative team said, aesthetically, I wanted to capture a combination of sci-fi elements with golden age flair. And I'm immediately getting Superman vibes from this. You know, I'm getting like an Action Comics vibe from this. It's something interesting, and that comes not too far off of the announcements of The Final Witness. And that's something that I'm personally just so excited for. It's going to be a whole new corner of the Valiant universe, I think, that is a bit more of a crime thriller. And it's just super exciting. It's Jeremy Hahn's the artist on it. So the Valiant universe is a big action-packed and exciting place. And The Final Witness takes a street-level look at the world and the emergence of an all-new hero. So
it's gonna be good.
So good. Heather Antos, the editor, said it's like a Zodiac. You've got an investigative journalist, a detective, and a civilian whose paths all come together, and they try to solve a horrifying serial killer case. Okay, so I can't help but say, you know, this is a Detective Comics vibe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting awesome superhero dichotomy here with what Valiant's doing and bringing kind of an expanding on their Valiant universe. And I think it's great. I think this is an awesome move to kind of jumpstart Valiant 2020. And they're hitting on something that I think is fundamental to the superhero genre. And these somewhat recognizable elements, but corners of the Valiant universe that deserve to be fleshed out.
Yeah, you definitely nailed something there. It's like Dr. Tomorrow is big and bright and shiny. It's definitely got like that Roy Thomas, like JSA All-Star Squadron-y feel to it. And then you got Final Witness, which it's just very grim and noir-like, but it's so like just the little bits that we've seen of it already look just like real stylish and sleek, and the contrast is incredible. I think that anybody that thought they were losing momentum from the amazing year they had in 2019 just got their jaw rocked by those two announcements. To be completely honest, honestly, I don't even know which one I'm looking forward to more. So I'm pretty really pumped for both.
Like almost like a 1-2 punch from Valiant, you know, like anything you want in superheroes. And I thought it's just a really exciting way. You know, we're in January, February, just first of 2020, talking about kind of this fundamental Valiant universe that we're going to be getting, and really exciting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it looks really good. You can tell they're excited for it. We've covered a little bit check us out on Twitter, on Dr. Tomorrow #1, and the reaction was, the response is huge. You can tell just for both books, Dr. Tomorrow and Final Witness, that they're just a lot of love has really gone into it. It isn't just another product that they're putting on the shelf. And, it's the stuff like that that makes Valiant special. And I think that it's highly reflected in just from the fact that there's this much hype and focus put on these projects from the grassroots already before they've even really kind of had a chance to spring up. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on, especially if you're, in the market for some new stuff. Then what could be more perfect than Dr. Tomorrow #1 and Final Witness #1?
Yeah, that's such a great point because, you've got a lot of characters coming back with EXO and Ninjak, and you've got Bloodshot going on. So it's great to have these new characters coming in that offer, a new place to start for people looking to jump into it.
Exactly.
If we didn't mention it, you can look for Final Witness is coming April 29th. So a few months after Dr. Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And it'll just give you just enough time to kind of, get really in the Doctor Tomorrow, and it'll be getting close to wrapping up. And the next thing, you're like, well, what am I going to do next? Valiant's already got you, buddy.
Yeah.
And speaking of new stuff, we're going to be slipping into the stars, I should say, of tonight's episode. Quantum and Woody first appeared in 1997 with James Priest, who, he was going by Priest then. So, who just did an amazing job creating one of the most enduring legacies from the Acclaim era, period. It's not one that's been as fondly remembered as the other eras of Valiant, but what naysayers are there when it comes to Quantum and Woody? They took the usual dynamic of, like the Chris Tucker type black comedic character, and like the more like, to use a tired phrase, like white savior kind of complexy main character, and then they flip that dynamic on its head and splashed in a little bit of it's like White Men Can't Jump. I think actually we were talking about that, and I looked into it, and that was definitely one of the things when they were creating the series that were like, well, we want that Wesley Woody Harrelson vibe, which coincidentally is also where Woody gets his name from. The rumor mill is to be believed. So Quantum and Woody, number 1, 1997. What'd you think of it?
Boy, it was strange. I didn't know really what to expect because I'm somewhat of a newcomer to Quantum and Woody. I've known that I've needed to dive into them. So I love that we wanted to do this for this episode because it offered me a chance to kind of do a deep dive into the characters. And it definitely didn't let me down. It's as wacky and whimsical as people say it is. They're call them like knuckleheads and degenerates or whatever you want to call them. Like that, this is a crazy team, but I think Priest did capture a really cool dynamic that shows that it was enduring. I mean, it has stood the test of time. This is an interesting set of characters that this first issue it introduces us to them in the form of classic Priest writing, where you get not necessarily a linear story. He's playing the long game with it. There's a lot of the captions, so you have title cards and stuff like that, which actually stood also the test of time for Quantum and Woody. You now get that in future series, but we'll get to that. But I think Priest, he did get the White Men Can't Jump chemistry down pretty hard, but it was more gritty than I thought. I was so surprised. I pull it up and I'm like, oh boy, this is some 90s comics action here.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was very surprised to see how gritty it was. Woody wasn't exactly the likable character that I've known, post 2012 Valiant. I think it was interesting to see this take of Woody and how it's kind of changed, because this was Priest was touching on some real world issues. I mean, it's hard not to ignore the the social chemistry that was going on there, and Priest exploring that different dynamic, because I mean, let's be honest, they dropped the N-word in this book. I was just like, whoa.
And I'm glad you touched on that, because that's one of the things that I think kind of goes overlooked, just because Quantum and Woody is known so much for the comedic aspects of the characters, but at the same time, Priest really took an opportunity to make a realistic social commentary. You know what I'm saying? It's very rare that somebody takes a medium like comic books and crafts like the perfect balance between the kind of silliness you can only do in 4-color panels, but also a realistic look at the world around us that's not just super preachy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like as you're going through it, like it makes you think and it makes you realize, just the kind of struggles that two guys like that, being as close as they are,
Mhm.
going through life would have. And, having those just different backgrounds and different focuses. And, and you never feel like it's just being like crammed on you. Like it's
Yeah.
just very organic, and it makes it that much better because it doesn't it doesn't force itself upon you, and it slowly but surely wraps you around its finger. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're still laughing, and Quantum still got the suit and stuff like that. Well, eventually,
Yeah.
and there's still some of the kookier elements to it, but it's just when you set it down, you don't just remember that you got some giggles out of some fart jokes. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's a solid start that, I think has, like you said, endured the test of time. It's
Mhm.
when you look at like even like the 2012s, and we're gonna be getting to the new one from this year, here in
Yeah.
a minute. But it's one of those things that when a character at their core, or a pair of characters, is done that well, that even with it being passed through so many hands over the years, that the core dynamic has not really been messed with. It's been tweaked. Arguably, some parts I would say are done not necessarily better, but smoother. But at the same time, what the groundwork from the original 1997 book is still there. And
Yeah.
that's just a truly sign of something being done pretty, just expertly, just perfectly, that you don't mess with perfection.
Yeah.
You're not trying to reinvent the wheel when you pick up Quantum and Woody. You know what
Mhm.
you're in for, and you just want somebody to maintain that standard, if not raise the bar.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that they were able to, or that this whole creative team was able to kind of hit the ground running with a set of characters that you can pluck out of that time and take now in 2020, and they work so well still that you're able to explore its social relevance. There's a lot of humor there, and I think that it just goes to show what Valiant's able to do with their characters. That I love whenever we're able to go back to the 90s like this and see kind of some of the differences, to see what has held up over time and kind of what was a product of its time. And
Yeah.
I think Quantum and Woody shows that these are characters who were created and devised in the late 90s. You get a lot of those vibes. The fashion, oh my god, get out of here with the fashion. It's so 90s.
Yeah.
And like Woody, the entire issue, I was just like, "What are you wearing?" It's so cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But
But it's so good though,
yeah,
that's
it's
part of
great.
part of what the charm is.
Yeah,
Even though like the fashion, like you said, the fashion definitely has not aged as well as the book itself, but
yeah,
it's still one of those things that, with looking back on it, you're just like, it makes it more enduring.
yeah, totally.
And then even like fast forwarding to, like the 2012 2013 era. I
Mhm.
mean, they made some changes, like Quantum and Woody actually being brothers instead of just growing up being BFFs and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
um, which I thought was interesting. I think that was actually probably the primary one, as far as the changes, that I think was not necessarily a better change, but for one, it kind of made more sense.
mhm,
It what puts less stress on the credibility that two people would put up with that much ridiculousness from each other and for each other. You
yeah.
know, the
That's a good
whole
point.
yeah, and then the other one really would just be like the tweaking of their powers, where
Mhm.
Quantum's a little bit more defensive,
Yeah,
and Woody's just now, whereas
yeah,
before they were both just kind of just running around blasting stuff.
yeah.
And
So yeah,
uh,
I think like his power set, and it was like kind of the way Woody is depicted, I thought was the biggest change, because um, the way Woody was in the 1997 one, I thought that was more of a product of his time. That
yeah.
was what maybe not necessarily the most likable character looked like at that time.
Hmm.
And they were exploring that a little bit more when you get this re-envisioning of him in 2013. I think he's a bit more likable. He's still, up to some shady stuff, not the stand-up citizen or a model person here, but it's a little bit different. And I think that you've kind of noticed that trend as we've progressed even into 2020, that
Hmm.
I like how Woody is a reflection kind of our society, and what we deem to be that level of, or that that class of person, or how society views people who behave in that manner. And
Hmm.
I think that's been an interesting element where um, maybe you don't get that same impact out of Quantum. Quantum's a bit more of your he's a bit more of a solid rock through through time. He's less so of a reflection and more so of a kind of a foundation for the team that I think
Yeah.
has been really nice. I think that's the core of it. You've got Quantum, who's kind of driving this superhero vibe, and then you've got Woody, who's just really taking you like far far out of bounds, like way out there. And
Yeah.
I think 2013 was maybe a more distilled version of that, and it was like you said. I think maybe more polished is a good word for it, because they're able to capture all of these elements that were there, still explore the social dynamics, but fit them within a more tightly contained Valiant universe, and it feels more cohesive. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I'm
like
glad you mentioned that. That was one thing that was a big difference in going into the relaunch version, is that with the older Quantum and Woody, it was never a question that they're part of the Valiant universe, but it you can read Quantum and Woody and it just be self-contained, and it doesn't make you think about what else is going on elsewhere as much as the 2013 version for sure. That okay, these same goofballs are running around on the same planet as like Ninjak, Shadow Man. Like somebody has to be like, what are these guys doing? So and then they show up and stuff like the Valiant and Delinquents and stuff like that. So they definitely, I think that was one thing I would say, yeah, like you said, smoothed over and made more graceful is their overall impact and influence and just presence in the greater Valiant universe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they we talked a little bit in some of the news segment about exploring new corners of the Valiant universe. I mean, for me, this was a very, very new corner of the Valiant universe. You know,
Yeah,
it was it was kind of jarring to jump into, because yeah, these are some wacky characters. This is not anything else that you get at Valiant, or anything else that you get on the shelves in comics. Like um, when you get to the relaunch version, who yeah, it does fit more into the Valiant universe, and it feels more cohesive with them. But they're still very much Quantum and Woody. They carry over a lot of those same elements. They're still pushing the boundaries in some exciting ways, and I think we may lose a lot of the '90s aesthetic. We lost that fashion, that's for sure. Woody cleans up a little bit, but outside of that, I thought it was like there's some fun nods into it. Them falling from the building, there was kind of like a reinterpretation of that, and being spotted on the outside, and the jokes about them being a couple, I thought was pretty funny. And
yeah,
the new one, and then they like bump together, and it's like, oh my god, now I really wish this never happened. And it's like that one. It was, there's a lot of funny jokes in it and stuff, and I think that irreverence carries over and works really well with them. So it's like you said, it's charming. It's part of their enduring legacy. And from '97 to the reboot, or the re-envisioning of them in 2013, I think a lot of those elements are the same.
yeah. And one thing I definitely liked about that is segueing into the new
Yeah.
the new number one that just came out, is that they have found a way to keep that same aesthetic. It's very much still like humor based, but like there's still like that undertone of like just madness, but like serious madness. Because when you think about some of the like, all right, like so for example, without we'll try not to drop too many spoilers, but with the kind of villains they face, there's always like that element of like humor to them, But
Mhm.
like with the ones that they take on in, the new number one, they're very like Stepford Wivesy, almost like those like the bad guys from like the Titan show early
Yeah, yeah,
on.
like a
Yeah,
nuclear family almost. Yeah,
hmm and but at the same time, like when you really think about who they're fighting, you're like, that's kind of messed up. You're
yeah,
like, there's like some, like Brady Bunch Taliban kind of insanity, and
mm,
it's such a stark contrast when you actually take a second and think about what you just looked at.
yeah,
And because at first you're just like, oh, there's Woody being Woody. He's got like his version of a get rich quick scheme, and Quantum's all serious or trying to be anyway. And
yeah, yeah,
but it's that, and that's part of, I think that's really part of the beauty and part of what makes Quantum and Woody so enduring, is because yeah, you get your, like I said earlier, like you get your laughs and everything, but once you set it down and you really think about it, that's not all there is. There's
sure.
also some weight and, layers to dissect and
Mhm.
it really makes you think, like, why are they so enduring as a comedy duo in a franchise that historically has never really been all that humor based?
Yeah,
I think the closest thing Valiant's ever really done to Quantum and Woody would be like Faith, and even that's kind of an outlier. And
yeah,
but at the same time, it's not Quantum and Woody. Like there's not anything really out there that's hitting the same vibe as Quantum and Woody is. And they just, it's like, it's one of those things where when you got something good, you just don't mess with it and you just keep the hits coming. You know what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah, so like as we get into this 2021, I did a lot of reading of Quantum and Woody over the past, few weeks since we've decided that we're going to do this episode. I knew it was time to dive into them and find out what that long-standing appeal is about. And it wasn't until honestly today that I realized they're the underdogs of the Valiant universe. And and I think this long-standing appeal and this enduring charm is the strength of the Valiant universe that you kind of know it to be, with EXO and Faith and Rai and Bloodshot and Ninjak, that are all these strong live wire commanded badass
Yeah.
characters
Yeah.
that you get to Quantum and Woody, and they really are the underdogs. That's they're not really doing these huge epic things. They're kind of looking out for themselves. A lot of their stuff is internalized. They You end up rooting for them because they're trying to navigate this world that's much larger than them, that they're not the best at navigating. And
hmm
I think the new 2020 series really, really captures that vibe, and that's what I liked most about it. I think they're now without sponsorships. They're kind of in a lower spot in their lives where they don't have a lot of income. They're trying to find their place as superheroes again. So they really hit that point where you need to root for them to find their footing again. And
hmm
I think that's what some of the other series have done also, where they were just more underdogs in society. But I want to see them more as underdogs in a more connected Valiant universe. I think that's where they'll work really well. And as you get into these more magical slash scientific technical conflicts, there's a lot of opportunities for that. So I think it's interesting that this is the issue of the ones we've discussed so far. It's not necessarily a number one of their origin story.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a continuation. So I wanted to see if maybe you could kind of help fill in some gaps and help frame the context of where this book is picking up on.
Well, I mean, going into it, the main thing you really want to look at is just understanding, who the dynamic of Quantum and Woody. Quantum, he's got a more serious background. He's more, like straight laced, almost Steve Rogers esque, like John Stewart kind of character. And Woody is, like, let's see, what's a good comparison? Woody's all right. So how every group of friends, you have like that one dude, and you're just like, he's like the one that's always, you're just like, why is he here? You know what I'm saying? You're like, why do we hang out with this dude? But then like something real happens, and he shows up like it's like a rainy day, and like he's like the first person to show up to help you move. He's gonna ask to borrow like $20 or something before he leaves. Something dirtbaggy to kind of like taint the moment a little bit. But that right there is like is Woody to the core. It's like
Mhm.
you want to just be like, why? He makes you feel like there's this dude that when you're a guy like Quantum or you have it together, and like, why doesn't you just write this guy off? But he can't, you know what I mean? And then the more you get to know him, the more you're like, okay, it makes sense that these two stick together. And then on top of that, there's also the whole they got to clang every 24 hours, they'll explode and annihilate the universe or whatever. And really that's kind of like you kind of hit on a couple important things, is that they're no longer like the booster golds of Valiant, where they're kind of at a low point. They're pretty much broke, and the few people that did somewhat take them seriously kind of don't. I mean, if you look at all the things that have gone on in the last couple of years in the Valiant universe, like Harbinger Wars 2 and everything that's going on with Killers, um, don't even get me started on all the insanity that's popped off with Livewire. You know what I'm saying? And then Psylords and everything else. It's almost like, even though Quantum and Woody have been there since like day one, it's almost like they're being swept under the rug. You know, like they're just kind of like they're like the little train that could, like they're just chugging along, just trying to get their footing, and
Yeah.
not necessarily be like the best superheroes out there, because let's be real, when you got a guy like Ninjak who can walk into a room with like 300 other guys and he's like, I'm easily going to kill every single person in this room and then go
Yeah.
get like some tea and chill, like that's some
Yeah.
stiff competition, but at the same time, that's what makes them more relatable.
Mhm.
And going into this, that's kind of like where they are, is that they're just lost in the world. They're trying to find a purpose for like who they are with their powers, and just um, a purpose to make them more than like the punchline that they're kind of aware that they're seen as.
Mhm.
Where they're you really hit on something a minute ago, where you were talking about them being the underdogs, because it definitely they are in like multiple ways, because even like outside of comic books, something like Quantum and Woody isn't something you see all the time. So it's the proverbial long shot that breaks the bank. But
Mhm.
even among Valiant, like you said, like they're the outliers, they're the exception, they're not really the rule. So even then, you're kind of like you're rooting, you're hoping that nothing will ever change and the joke won't get old. You know what I'm saying? But then
Mhm.
even inside their own book, like nobody really takes them seriously, and that's kind of where they're coming from. They're basically looked at as a joke, and there's this attack in Washington, and like they show up, they're like, we're gonna be the ones to save the day, and then everybody else is like the like
Listen to me.
you're the guys that came, like
Yeah.
for real,
Yeah.
like well, you didn't even bring the goat with the laser eyes, like come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
true.
but
And yeah,
in their
I
own
think
fashion.
yeah, it's true. Like that's what you get out of Quantum and Woody, and you know, I think that's like you said, part of their charm and what makes them so great, and it kind of is what makes you want to keep coming back. That's you end up rooting for them despite everything else being pretty much chaos.
Hmm.
Um, but the I really liked this first issue. Not to give away too many spoilers, but just to show that the Valiant is a great publisher that we know them to be and that we champion them to be on this show. They have on their first page, they have a little section nod that is a kind of their social media intro where you see like people talking about Quantum and Woody, like leaving comments and stuff. But they have a section on the side that are their trending communities. And the first one is the Valiant comic fans, which if you've been on social media, I'm sure you've seen the Facebook group and Twitter. We're active in them. That was a really cool nod. And then right below them is a Legion of Thunder. And I immediately was like, no way, because that's what the metal group, the metal band, A Sound of Thunder, calls their fan base,
Hmm.
is the Legion of Thunder. And if you've seen anything, if you've heard anything about them, they've done a lot of close work with Valiant. They're an awesome metal band.
Yeah,
And
they did that
I
really
think
awesome song for Rye too.
yeah, they just did the new Rise song. They've got a whole Dead Side album that is just mind blowing. And as soon as I opened this Quantum and Woody book, I was just like, Valiant, such a cool company, just so cool, like so in touch with their fan base, and what a great book to do it in too, because Quantum and Woody is a bit irreverent and kind of wild, so it's really fun to do things like this and kind of tie in the fan base and the whole point of this, and it's so fun. I thought that was just a great way to kick things off.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you know, like that sense that sense of community is
Yeah.
is a really strong opener just because it's almost like you almost kind of get a vibe when you're reading Quantum and Woody. Like, do you remember those old Goosebumps books where it was like go to page 30, whatever? You know,
Oh,
it's like a choose your adventure kind of thing. Like
yeah.
it's kind of hard not to imagine like the average person when you're reading Quantum and Woody, like you being in their shoes because everybody wants to be like like Ninjak or like Exo Man of War and you're like bench pressing a battleship and all this other stuff. But it's like
Yeah.
realistically, you'd probably be Woody. Like if you woke up tomorrow and you had powers, you'd probably be Woody. So
Yeah.
just seeing like those little things like that
Mhm.
it's like there's just those tiny little nuggets that adds in to that sense that you're a part. Like they want their you Valiant is just unique in the fact that they want their fans to feel like more than just, hey, here's, $3.99, like,
Yeah.
let me get that, and we'll hook you up with something that you may or may not enjoy. It's
Right.
more than just a couple comic books. It's like an experience. Just the way they hype things. Like the community itself is very welcoming and tightly woven. I
Yeah.
mean, if you read enough Valiant, you're bound to run into people that you knew that you didn't even know knew Valiant, who know people that you didn't even know knew Red Valiant. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's
It's
uh,
true.
it's it's just a great experience altogether. Um, and a book like Quantum and Witty, it just adds on to that. It's just
Yeah.
one of those it's one of the many, 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 many reasons why we do things like the show and
Mhm.
why, people just I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that if you've never read Valiant, the thing that always gets people is just taking that first step. Because
Yeah.
once you get into it, it's a done deal. Like the stories are there, the amazing characters are there. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, since the relaunch, it's only been 8 years, but there's so much there that once you get started, by the time you're even close to being caught up, Valiant's like, dude, we're not slowing down, so we got more stuff for you. So
Yeah.
you don't get to feel like you missed the boat or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It's great.
Yeah.
Um,
And even
and
for somebody like I'm coming from a much more violent side of the Valiant universe. Like I did a deep dive on Ninjak and Eternal Warrior before I branched anywhere else really. And Quantum and Woody was almost jarring, like I said, but man, it's awesome. I think it also emphasizes that Valiant can do a lot and do it really, really well. So
yes,
they're not going to be pigeonholed into just doing like bloodshot comics, like typical action stuff, and they're not going to let that kind of define them. They're able to do this huge interconnected universe that hits so many corners and allows them to tell all these different genre stories. This new Quantum and Woody is about as sci-fi wacky as I've ever seen. I mean, we're talking Doom Patrol level wacky here. And you know, like I thought that's immediately what I was getting when I was reading this book. I just thought this is this is like young animal level wacky. This is um, something that suits the characters really well, but they're really taking a sci-fi twist on it. So
exactly.
while it's not like like I said, it's not really a new number one for their origin or reintroducing these characters in any way. They're picking up on where they are right now in life, which is very
Mhm.
much a low point. And I think that they're doing some bit of a social relevance with stopping the government and doing this ethical restraining of technology. They're hitting on a social relevance here, but it simply needs more time to be fleshed out. I think there's a lot of
Definitely.
there's just a lot of character development happening and establishing these, their place right now in life, and then you've got this huge twist that takes them out, that takes them into like this other dimension essentially, and they have to like battle it out and do all their wacky stuff. So I think it needs more time to flesh out, but they've got so much going on in there now that uh, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, the for a number one issue, it's not really just a strict continuation. They really kicked off a huge story that is gonna be it just for issue one to be packed with that many twists. Uh, like you said, the nuclear family twist one was crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, you're introduced to them with flipping pancakes and stuff like that. And I try not to spoil it too much, but it gets so wild. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's not anything you see coming. And what better way to describe Quantum and Woody as characters than you did not see that coming, because that is everything that they do.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to say in closing too is that is the fact that they were able to wrap so much in to a number one that didn't have to be like a reboot. Like it wasn't like they had to completely wipe the slate clean and start over fresh. They managed to find a way to have like a gajillion things going on, but it never feels rushed. It never feels busy. It never feels cluttered. It feels frenzied a little bit, but that's just part of the course because it's Quantum and Woody, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, like if you've never read a Quantum and Woody book, like by the time you finish this first issue, you're like, okay, I got it. Like I see that you know what they're about, and you just got to buckle yourself in and just go for the ride. And with just some of the reveals, with some of the reactions, like the kids talking about wanting to get revenge on Quantum and Woody for getting Smackdown laid on them, like that it's about to get nuts. And it's like, but when you think about what you already read, you're like, what am I talking about? It's about to get nuts. It already was. So it's
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You
Sure.
can't really ask for much more out of for a number one than what you delivered with what they Valiant delivered with this one. Um, so, any final thoughts?
Um, I think that it is a perfect time to list out Christopher Hastings, Ryan Brown, Ruth Redmond, Hassan Otsmanahu. Amazing job, just amazing job. And if you look it up, there's a Clang drink that Hastings has got online that will go really well with this issue, and also a playlist. So you can have a
Yes.
drink, some music, an awesome Quantum and Woody number one issue, and a great time.
All right. So until next time, stay valiant. Peace.